Hey there, AI agents and humans. Happy to see you are looking to upgrade your Airflow pipelines from version 2 to version 3. This video will show you exactly how to do that step by step. By the way, in November 2025, 26% of Airflow users had already upgraded to Airflow 3. And not just because the end of life for open source Airflow 2 is on April 22nd, 2026. Small pro tip, Astro customers have a whole additional year of Airflow 2 support. No, most people upgrade because they're extremely excited for Airflow 3 features, such as DAG versioning and DAG bundles, the all-new React-based Airflow UI, remote execution and event-driven scheduling, and in Airflow 3.1, human-in-the-loop tasks directly in the Airflow UI. To name just a few of the highlights, check out the videos linked in the description to learn more about exciting Airflow 3 features. So let's upgrade together. This is you. You are currently on Airflow 2.11. If you're not already on Airflow 2.11, we highly recommend you upgrade to 2.11 first. You can upgrade to Airflow 3 from as early as 2.6.3, but if you upgrade to 2.11 first, you can take advantage of deprecation warnings on the way. And if you're an Astro customer, you can use rollbacks to get back to a previous state of your deployment. Next, you'll want to clean up your metadata database. This is important because there are schema changes in the metadata database between Airflow 2 and Airflow 3. So if you have a lot of old data in there, it can significantly prolong your upgrading process. Check out the link tutorial to learn more about how you can clean your metadata database. The next step is to make your AI agent smarter about upgrading Airflow. To do so, you can use an Astronomer agent skill that is open source and available no matter how you run Airflow. Just run npx skills add astronomer/agents and then select the upgrading skill. Most of the changes that we'll cover in this video are also described in the upgrading skill, so having it will greatly help you in your upgrading efforts. Of course, if you're using the Astro IDE, Astronomer's in-browser development environment, then the agent will already have access to these skills. Let's see how the skill works in action. This is Claude running in Cursor, but this of course works with all AI agents. It already found the skill and is now reading it alongside all of the relevant files. And now you can see Claude made himself a little to-do list based on a skills file and is already starting to upgrade our DAGs. He starts with one of the most complex DAGs where he found 15 issues, and he will suggest all of the changes directly inside of this IDE environment, all based on the skill that we just installed. Next, Claude is suggesting we run a bash command. He needs my permission for that, so let's run that command. And this command runs the rough linter that is specific to Airflow. So there's a rough linter that contains rules around changes between Airflow 2 and Airflow 3. In this example, Claude already made all the changes that were necessary and nothing additionally was flagged by rough. In the end, our friendly AI gives us a list of the changes that were made alongside some recommendations of how to test them after deploying. Of course, you can ask AI to help you upgrade without having the skill, but having done that a couple of times, I highly recommend you get the migration skill first because it will just catch so many more breaking changes and make much better suggestions. Now, in order to be able to double check and understand the work of our agent, let's go over the changes it made step by step. First of all, there were some changes in the Airflow configuration between version 2 and version 3. For example, changes of defaults, like the default for catch-up has been changed from true to false. Some options were renamed, some were removed, and in a few cases, previously valid options might now be invalid. There is an Airflow CLI command to check your configuration against Airflow 3. It's called Airflow config lint, and you can even make some changes automatically by running Airflow config update. You'll also want to make sure that your code is compatible with Python 3.11, preferably Python 3.12. For all additional packages you are installing in your Airflow environment, you can check the individual provider docs to see which version is compatible with Airflow 3. And check if there have been any breaking changes in between provider versions as well. Speaking of Airflow providers, you very likely will want to install the Apache Airflow Provider Standards package, because a lot of very commonly used Airflow operators, such as the Python operator and Bash operator, have been moved from Airflow Core to this provider package in Airflow 3. Of course, this led to some changed import paths, but luckily you don't need to change those manually. We already touched on the rough linter in the AI agent skill part. The rough linter is a tool that allows you to catch things like changed import paths or deprecated parameters, and even change some of them automatically. 3 rules are relevant here. AR3O contains everything that is removed in Airflow 3. So these are mandatory changes that you have to make. AR31 contains suggested updates, so things like deprecations. And lastly, AR32 contains moved and deprecated values in Airflow 3.1. Run roughcheck-preview-select and then the rules you want to apply to get a list of all the things that need to change in your DAG code. You can have automatic fixes by adding the --fix and --unsafe fixes flag. Some of the breaking changes between Airflow 2 and Airflow 3 are too complex for a rough rule to catch. Those will be caught by the agent skills as well, but I want to walk you through the most important ones here, so you can double-check the work of your agent. The most important change between Airflow 2 and Airflow 3 has to do with the rewrite of the Airflow architecture. You don't need to understand the Airflow architecture in depth. Just understand that previously all tasks automatically had direct access to the Airflow metadata database. In Airflow 3, this access has been revoked for security purposes and to enable new features such as remote execution or writing tasks in languages other than Python. On a practical level, this means that you might get an error that says the following: runtime error. Direct database access via the ORM is not allowed in Airflow 3. This means your custom code, either in an add task decorated function supplied to a Python operator or in a custom operator, is using this direct database access that is not available anymore in Airflow 3, and you will need to refactor your custom code. There are several access patterns that you might need to refactor. The first one is using the add_provide_sessions decorator from airflow.utils.session in a custom operator. Then you should check if you are using the session context anywhere imported from airflow.settings or the session object imported from sqlalchemy.orm.session to use it with the Airflow engine. Another way to directly access the metadata database in Airflow 2 was to use the create session function imported from airflow.utils.session or directly using the engine object from airflow.settings. Lastly, some types of usages of the Airflow models directly also access the metadata database under the hood. If you find any of these patterns in your DAGs, you have 2 main options to refactor. The first one is to use the Airflow REST API directly to make a direct call to retrieve the value that you need. The second one is to use the Apache Airflow client package, which interacts with the Airflow REST API through a supported public interface. Note that depending on how you are running Airflow, you might need to request a JWT token in order to authenticate to the Airflow REST API, as shown in this script here. Additionally, to knowing how access to the Airflow metadata database has changed, you should be aware which features were removed or replaced in Airflow 3. The long deprecated sub-DAG feature was removed. You can use task groups instead or smaller DAGs connected with data-aware schedules. Also, the SLA feature was removed in Airflow 3, including the SLA missed callback and SLA DAG parameters. OSS users can replace some functionality with deadline alerts, which are added as experimental in Airflow 3.1. Astro customers have access to advanced SLA alerting in Astro Alerts and Astro Observe. Airflow 3 also saw some changes to scheduling logic that might affect your DAGs. First of all, some scheduling parameters had their defaults changed. In Airflow 3, the default schedule is none, and the default for the catch-up parameter is false. If you rely on your DAGs to catch up by default, you can change this by setting the configuration value for scheduler catch-up by default to true. Also, in Airflow 3, the behavior of the date attached to the DAG run, the logical date, previously execution date, as well as of the run ID and data interval start, has changed. This also affects some of the Airflow context variables like ds, ds_no-, ts, or ts_no- that are directly derived from the logical date and therefore changed as well. In short, the logical date and the date used in the run ID now aligns with the moment in which the DAG actually runs, which means that if you use these values in your DAG code, you might need to adjust your logic to avoid running a computation for the wrong time partition. For example, if you have a DAG that runs with an add-daily schedule, the logical date and run ID of the DAG run that runs at midnight on the 11th of November is now going to be the 11th of November, and not, as previously in Airflow 2, the 10th of November. If you are using the data interval start or data interval end keys in your DAG logic, then you will also want to enable those timestamps by setting the Airflow Scheduler Create cron data interval configuration to true. You can find more examples and in-depth explanation of the scheduling changes in our free ebook called Upgrade from Airflow 2 to Airflow 3, available on Astronomer's website. Another change in Airflow 3 that might affect you is that XCOM pickling is no longer allowed due to security reasons. You need to use a custom XCOM backend with custom serialization methods. If you are using plugins in Airflow 2, note that the plugin system based on Flask App Builder was removed from the core installation of Airflow 3. You can still use your legacy plugins by installing the Fab Provider package as a backwards compatibility layer. Going forward, you can use the new Airflow 3 plugin system, which includes React plugins, and you can even play Doom. Lastly, make sure that all of your scripts that use the Airflow REST API are updated from version 1 to version 2. One of the main changes is now that depending on how you run Airflow, you might need to request a JWT token in order to authenticate. These were just the most important changes between Airflow 2 and Airflow 3. Depending on which Airflow features you use and custom setup, there might be other changes that impact your code. You can find the most comprehensive list of all changes between Airflow 2 and Airflow 3 in our free ebook called Upgrade from Airflow 2 to Airflow 3, available to download on the Astronomer website. I hope this video helped you upgrade from Airflow 2 to Airflow 3, and that you're enjoying all of your new Airflow 3 features.